The last option that I want to show you is similar to the CSS in JS. This time I'm just going to show you transition CSS, which is similar, but it's different because we're not passing properties. So React allows to pass properties and using third-party libraries like we did, like style component. But I want to show you there's times that you don't need to pass properties, but you want to use CSS as transition on your SVG, and we can do that. So let's create another component and do just that. What I'm going to be doing, I open up the README file, and then I'm going to create another component using the generate React CLI. And I'm just using component without specifying the type, and that's going to take my my default template. That I set it up with just function component. So it's going to be, all right, let's create that. Here you go, CSS Transition. And we can already map our app to CSS Transitions. Okay, so look right here, we have a function component that I called CSS Transition, and inside we have a div. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add one more div inside, a wrapper, and I'm gonna give it a class name of, let's say, my div. And now if we look at our code, if we run our code, we don't have anything, right? Because we didn't draw anything on the screen yet. Now what we want to do is we're going to go into the CSS file and we'll create some CSS. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to call the div. So we called it, our class name was my div, and we can set a background and we'll give it a color of orange, and we can give it a height, let's say 100 pixel, and a width, we can give it a width of 100 pixels. So now we have a div with an orange color. Take a look here. There you go. So we got a rectangle, orange rectangle, and now what we want to do is we want to add transition. So what we can do is we can add a transition, and the transition we can either specify all. If we specify all, it's going to transition all the elements, or we can just transition just one attribute. For example, if we want to do transition just for the transform, we have to do transition property, and then we can specify where what to apply the transition on. So in our case, we just want to apply it on the color. So but if we use all, it's going to do it to all the attributes. And then what we want to do is we want to set another state. So the second state that I'm going to create is, if I'm calling my div again, and I'm giving it a hover state. So that way on hover, we can create the change that we want to make. So for example, we can change the background. We had it as orange. Let's change it to green. Actually, I like the other one, the green yellow, look a little bit better. And that way we can actually transition from the orange to the green. Now, if I want to, also once I hover, if I want to move my my rectangle, what I can do is I can just set a transform, and in my transform I can use translate the X location, and then I can move my rectangle. Oops, I have a typo. Transform. I can move my rectangle once I hover it. Take a look. So now once I hover it, you see, it's moving the location. But see, it happens really quickly. It's not really smooth. So what I can do is I can set my transition of transform to ease out so it's more elegant. So what I can do is I can set the transition of transform to be 2 seconds and to set an ease out. That way it's going to be much more, it's going to move more gentle, you see, instead of just jumping on the screen. The last thing I want to show you is if you go back into Chrome and you open up the inspect and you click the 3 dots, you'll see you have an animation. And that animation, if we hover over, you can see it shows us what happened between 100%, 25%, 10%, and then we can see the animation that happened. And if we click that animation, we can see the properties that got changed.